Hey everybody, what's going on? This is Americans React To. I'm Scott alongside Kyle and Mr. Obie Spencer, and we are right now looking at women underwater rugby. Essentially 15 players on each team, 12 dressed, 6 in the water at any one time. The ball itself is made out of a salt, ball in this case, and 2 15-minute halves. It's a scrum, no punching, kicking, or choking are allowed. And yeah, this is the sport.
Okay, so do you have to pass the ball, or
you can pass it? You can just run it with yourself. They admit outright that even though it's called underwater rugby, it really is not in fact rugby. It's more of just soccer.
It's like
Quidditch.
It looks like it's like underwater basketball.
Okay.
Complete with tackling, and it's like a combination of like 5 different sports all underwater, and I don't think those snorkels are really helpful underwater.
They pretty much aren't, I don't think.
I
By the way, it's
think
hard, you can't rip it off the face either.
I think what it does is allows you to get up, get air, and get back down for an attack quicker than if you had to grasp all the way for air.
This sport originated in Germany in 1961 and then became popular in some of the Nordic countries. Their first championship was 1978, and then some of the rules had to be merged. They kind of basically just started to gain more popularity at that point. And right now, according to the website, they have 17 different countries involved in their championships now. So impressive on that. Yeah.
Okay.
I find it funny on how the Nordic countries are the ones that adopted this. Like, the countries with the coldest water are the ones who adopted the underwater rugby.
By the way,
because
go ahead.
it's definitely a swimming pool-based sport, though, so that's why, because they were in their YMCA's or whatever the equivalent is.
Okay, fair enough. But
Reminder, by the way,
in the 60s, that like predates good water heat, good pool heating.
Yeah. I'd like to point out this video was given to me by my wife, who recommended that we do this video. So if you're looking at this and thinking, why the heck is this being played? She sent me the vid. I'm being a good husband here, so I just point that out.
Oh my goodness.
But, yeah, it's funny. It almost looks like, have you ever been in the water in like the ocean and like all the fish just surround you when you have food? I feel like that's kind of what this is a little bit here too.
I would drown after the first play.
Probably, yeah.
Oh no! Get back on the.
These underwater sports always impress me, just from the sheer ability of the players involved to hold their breath while basically tackling and pushing each other. Like someone pushes me underwater, I'm like, and then I have to go right out.
Yeah, the stamina that's involved in this. I mean, like I said, they have 12 that are dressed, 6 at any one time, so you can swap players out. But still, I mean, this is all go. And the problem is with water like this, there's so much resistance, so you can't really throw the ball or pass it very well, aside from maybe 3, 4, 5 feet, maybe, because the water is automatically resistant.
Mm-hmm. Like water polo, they're at the top and throwing it over the water, which takes a lot of leg strength to basically boost yourself up to throw it. This requires both leg and upper body strength to be able to launch it like that. And while the ball definitely looks like it moves through the water well enough probably because of like whatever it's made of or whatever density it is, like you see all the passes are short passes. You just see everyone gotta go up and get some air, and then you just got like this one person just basically planting themselves on top of the bucket. That is the goal, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it looks like basically feeding time in a fish tank.
Thank you. Yes.
And it's just.
But the sport, like I said, it's 2 15-minute halves with a 6-minute break in between, and you're allowed one minute timeout. Okay. So if your teams are getting tired, by the end of the game, you're allowed a 1 minute timeout. One.
I would not want to get checked into that little bump on the wall there, because that probably stings like hell.
A lot of this stuff is probably, you get a lot of injuries on this, because even though the water is resistant, you get smacked into the wall like that. You get checked into the water. Yeah.
You're gonna collapse a lung just from holding your breath for so long.
They have a snorkel and they have other things like that as well. So
I don't think the snorkel is effective underwater.
Last time I checked, it was not, but it does. It allows you to, like I said, it allows you to quickly get back into the game.
Yeah,
you don't need to put your entire head out of the water, which is fine, but it just like the amount of physical fitness this would require is astronomical.
The combined body fat on these women is like what, 12%?
If that.
Yeah. That's feeding time right there in the fish tank.
Then you just get the one just plopped into the bucket there.
Well, it's funny. It's like the scrum in the NFL when there's a fumble. It's kind of like that.
Shoving her out of it.
But
oh my
god, the replacement is right there. I can't wait to discuss like the scoring because wow.
Should we get into that? You think?
I think so.
All right, so that is women's underwater rugby. As always, we're going to be breaking it down into 5 different categories here: obscurity, badassery, playability, watchability, and of course, bettability, whether or not Vegas can make money on it. So in this case, I guess I'll just start with it since I'm talking anyway. Obscurity, I got to give this a 9. I'd never had any idea anything like this ever even existed out there. The only reason we found out is because of the fact that we're tied to the U.S. National Synchronized Swim competition, and that's where we learned about this sport. It is admittedly not rugby. They admit it's not rugby, but it is something that is pretty damn obscure despite the name involved. Badassery, dude, we got to give this a 10 here. The amount of energy that is burned off with something like this, because this is all go. You go back to the surface, you get air, you get swapped out, but you do not really get a break unless a goal is scored. It is pure unbridled scrum. Playability, I'm going to go the other way with this one. I'm going to give it a 3 because, again, the amount of stamina that's required, the average person can't do a sport like this, like some of the other ones that we've done. Watchability, I got to go with a 6 on it. I think it's intriguing, but I think it's also very confusing at the same time. You watch the energy, you watch the athleticism, but I think it's real easy to lose where the ball is placed, what's going on, because there's just a bunch of people just trying to pull the ball out of each other's hand. And I think that can get lost on the average person. Now, can Vegas make money on it? Of course they can. It's a sport. It's, in this case, women in in bathing suits. So there's a lot of money to be made. And I'm sure basically FanDuel, DraftKings, all the rest of them, I'm giving this thing a 9 on bettability because somehow, some way, Vegas can make money on it if this thing was more popular.
So I'm going to go here with obscurity is 8. Again, I'm high on that. Never even remotely heard of it, thought of it, came up with it in my mind as something like a thing that I would think to do. Loved it from that. Super obscure. I think my biggest difference here between me and you, Scott, is going to be on this one, the badassery. I'm going to go down with only a 5. I do think that these women are incredibly athletic. They are doing something that I cannot do. I usually put badassery with significantly more punishment. And even though they are banging into each other and whatnot, it wasn't, I didn't see people punching each other. And you can't hit that hard underwater if you've ever tried. Like, you can dunk somebody, but you can't really hit them. We talked about it, how the ball doesn't quite flow because of that. But I did agree with you, Scott. 100% playability is a 3. I cannot do that. I don't know anyone who can do that. That took, as we said, massive lung capacity and massive physical strength and endurance to do. So I apologize to everyone that I did give it a lower badassery. That's just my badassery is about violence. But playability is really hard to rate. Another place I think I disagree with now, watchability is a 10. And I'm not just saying that because it was pretty women in bathing suits. I could have watched men play in that. I was seeing the patterns in the game quickly, and I found it fascinating. While watching how they were passing it around, trying to create space, waiting for the goalie to get tired, watching how the other goalies were layering in and I just thought it was, you guys kept using feeding frenzies, and it was like a feeding frenzy. Another thing I find fascinating to watch is because those aren't just random. You start to see patterns in there, and I was seeing some patterns, and I think it was one of the quietest I've ever been watching one of these sports. It just was fascinating to me what was going on. Bettability, I'm not sure. I'm going to give it a 5. You can certainly bet on winners and losers, who's going to score, who's going to give up goals. Some of the other sports we did, I saw a lot more in-game betting, which I know is huge now on the phone. Maybe if I understood the sport better, I could come up with what some other in-game bettings are. But I think you're going to have your basic over/under, your win-loss, who's going to score. So I'm going to give it 5. I think it's an average bettability type of game.
All right.
Okay.
Now, ball's in your court in this case. Go for it.
Sounds good. All right. So for obscurity, I actually would give this one a 7. While the sport itself, that specific set of rules might be very, very specific and definitely worth a higher grade. What they're doing is essentially just swimming underwater, dropping a ball into an underwater bucket. That I wouldn't say that that's really that obscure of a game, because I've played stuff like that when I was a kid, like in my pool in the backyard. It's like we just take like a ball or like a bag that sinks, and we just move it to the opposite side of the pool, and basically bumping each other out of the way. So while the rule set itself is definitely specific, the idea of the sport itself, I wouldn't say is as obscure as what most might think. It's basically an underwater sport where you're moving a ball to a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say similar. It's underwater water polo essentially with a lot more contact, if that makes sense. Badassery, I definitely am on the higher level on this one. While I do agree that it's not as physical as rugby, the amount of just lung capacity and the ability to endure essentially being out of air underwater for a long period of time, much longer than I would do. Like, some of those women were underwater for well over 30 seconds, which is not easy to do. That takes a very strong set of lungs. You're essentially pushing, yet you're expending strength and essentially even more oxygen by constantly having to shove people out of the way. You're definitely getting pushed in the stomach and in the diaphragm, no doubt. So you're getting the air pushed out of you. So if you've ever been underwater and you run out of air and you have to stay under, that takes a toughness that I do not have, and not many people do have. So I would give Badassery an 9. Okay. I was gonna say 8, and then I'm like, you know what? No, 9, definitely a 9. Playability, this specific set of rules and this specific type of game, I'd say, well, yeah, like you can play, like when you're younger, you could play, or when you're in your own pool, you could do something similar. You're only underwater for at most of 3, like maybe 4 feet, 4 to 8 feet. This one looks like you're going down at least 10 feet. So playability, I'd say I will go with a 3. It's definitely not something that your average Joe would be able to do at this type of level. So while, yeah, as I said before, it may be something similar to what we do, to what we have done as a kid, this is not something that your average Joe can do. just dive in the pool and say, hey, let's play some underwater rugby and beat the hell out of each other underwater. No, not everyone can do that. Watchability, I would say it depends on a couple factors, but I'd say for me a watchability would be 9. But for your average Joe, I would say it would be about a 7, maybe 8. So, but I'm going on the lower end. Watchability 7, because as you saw, it is like a feeding frenzy. So if you do know what's going on, it probably can be a bit more watchable for you. But for someone just looking at it the first time, if if you like watching women underwater in bathing suits, yeah, it could definitely be a 9. Otherwise, but if you're just watching it for the sport, I'd probably say about a 7. Bettability, my answer is yes, because it is Vegas, and it definitely, as mentioned before, it definitely, you can, if it's Vegas, if it exists, you can bet on it. But in terms of the different nuances that this game has, I would say that bettability would be about an 8. Because you could definitely make parlay bets depending on how the course of the game goes. You can make individual bets on how long someone stays underwater, how many goals they score, how many blocks they get, or even individual of how many times they go up for air. So you could find something to bet on for every little thing involving that game.
Pretty much.
But yeah, so I would say like 8, maybe 9. So I'll just go with 8 for that.
So that was underwater rugby, specifically women's underwater rugby, suggested by my wife in this particular case. If there's any other sports that you guys want us to cover, and we actually have a couple of coming up on tap, let us know in the comments. Also, when it comes to this sport, let us know your scores as well. You know, curious to see what you guys have to think about this. Do you agree with our scores? Do you think our scores are stupid as hell? Let us know in the comments. Anyway, I'm Scott. That's Kyle. That's Obie Spencer. Thanks as always. Take care. Stay awesome.